I find it interesting that we are currently debating the title to the bill. And it's an interesting principle of parliamentary procedure that one should not be amending a bill unless, if their amendment were to be adopted, they plan to vote for the bill. So in essence, that based upon that principle, the Democrats are telling us tonight that if we merely change the title, they would be able to accept the bill. Now, let me go back to Jefferson and Jefferson's manual, because while the committee process has changed over time, they used to appoint committees. They didn't have standing committees. Jefferson lays out in his manual of parliamentary practice and procedure that those who take exceptions to some particulars in the bill are to be a part of the committee, but none who speak directly against the body of the bill should be a part of the committee dealing with amendments to the bill. That's where this whole principle of you don't amend a bill unless, if your amendment's adopted, you're willing to vote for it. He goes on to say, for he that would totally destroy will not amend it. He who would totally destroy will not amend it. The child, referencing the bill, the child is not to be put to a nurse that cares not for it. So I would submit, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that the title is more important than the substance to my friends on the other side of the aisle. Now, I would hope that wasn't the case, but it does seem that we have spent hours and hours and hours worrying about the title of this bill as opposed to getting down to the policy. I have also heard, as comments have been made, that the other side has been willing to work with us, but my experience was early on and continued until November, was that every time we would raise some issue related to the Affordable Care Act, we were met with derision and taunts that we were crazy or just didn't want to go forward with this great plan they had. Tonight we hear they recognize there are many problems with it and they'd love to work with us, but that isn't what I heard before. Likewise, when we start talking about documents and trying to get documents, our committee is still trying to get documents which we were told we weren't going to get from the Obama administration, trying to determine how they came about the cost-sharing subsidies without authority to spend that money. It's in the bill, but the money's not in the bill. And the Democrat Senate removed the cost-sharing subsidy portions or the part that paid for that, and yet they continued in the Obama administration to spend that money without any authority from Congress. We haven't been able to get those documents. So before we start worrying about what documents may have be floating around out there about a CBO score, perhaps we can get some real information on the Affordable Care Act itself and how they've been operating it without lawful authority. Now, I also have stories from back home. As we were all out on the hustings over the last year, we've heard many, many stories. We've all heard stories, and I appreciate that. But when a lady tells me that she's worried that it's killing her family financially, that her deductibles are too high, she stops me at a county fair and says her husband's sick, and as a result of that, they're selling assets because their deductibles are so high, their copays are so high, they can't afford the so-called Affordable Care Act, and ask me to get rid of it. I get letters, on a regular basis from constituents who tell me that they can't afford the Affordable Care Act, as it's called, that they don't understand why this system is so poor. People who tell me that it's hurting everything that they're doing, and then conversations that just come up where parents are trying to decide whether or not they buy the medication for their children. This happened within the last couple of weeks. Whether or not they should buy the medication for their children because it's not a life-threatening illness and it might make them feel a little bit better, but their copay is so high and their deductible is so high that they're not sure it's worth spending the money. They're having to debate that in their households. So I submit to you that anybody who thinks that the Affordable Care Act is in fact working is mistaken, and we need to be coming up with a new plan. I think this proposal before us tonight is a good plan. It is far better than what is currently on the table. I hope we'll get on to passing it. But if there are, in fact, some constructive amendments, I would like to see them, because debating about a cute title to poke fun at Republicans is not really wanting to work with us. It's just playing more games. I yield back.
Gentlemen.